Try it on the other one. I still don't hear it. Okay, okay. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Opening arguments has started in the trial of the Minneapolis police officer who the world watched die at his hands. There is absolutely, positively, unquestionable. There is no defense for absolute wrong. Briefly, we'll go into some of what has been said already by the state. The defense team is now up speaking. One thing that is a guarantee. This is not the George Floyd trial. However, George Floyd is on trial. It's called character assassination. George Floyd's past, George Floyd's use of drugs had absolutely nothing to do with his death on May 25th, 2020. I don't care how you look at it. I don't care how you slice it and dice it. I don't care what words you put out there. The world watched George Floyd die at the hands of a white police officer, Officer Derek. The defense, as you know, is going to bring up George Floyd's criminal history. They're going to bring up that he had drugs in his system. The state is not denying that. But here's what the state is saying about those drugs in its system. They had absolutely nothing to do with his death. The prosecutor also talked about a dispatcher who was watching the incident unfold on another camera. And as long as she has been there, she has never had to call the police on the police. But when she saw what the officer was doing to George Floyd, she called the police on the police. The prosecutor also talked about when the paramedics finally arrived, how the officer still kept his knee on his neck. When paramedics arrived, the officer still would not remove his knee from George Floyd's neck. As they was trying to give him medical attention, he still kept his knee on George Floyd's neck. He talked about when George Floyd was begging for his life. Talked about how he called out to his mother, who is deceased. Played a video, lasted 9 minutes and some seconds. And you could see and hear George Floyd. My neck hurt. My stomach hurt. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Please, please Give me some water. You can hear the crowd yelling, you're killing it. He's of no threat to you or nobody. He's on the ground. He's handcuffed. He's turned sideways. The knee is on his neck. The prosecutor also talked about there is a certain amount of time that you have to get someone under your control. And once you have reached that level, then that person is of no more threat to law enforcement. So what do you do then? You stop whatever you had to do to bring him under your control. Not this officer. He did. He enjoyed killing George Floyd. One thing I didn't know is that George Floyd was a COVID survivor. He said, they're going to kill me. I know they're going to kill me. I know they're going to kill me anyway. He knew they was going to do it. Slam dunk case, open and shut. The world watched George Floyd die. He killed him. This is going to be an easy win. No questions about it. And if you believe that, you're a fool with a serious problem. We had to beg to get him arrested. Once a police officer has been arrested, we don't clap. We still haven't made it to the courtroom. And once we make it to the courtroom, we still don't clap. We are aiming for a conviction. If we get the conviction, a satisfying conviction, because I believe the punishment must always fit the crime. And if that be the case, then we clap. It's as simple as that. But the defense team is going to make this as difficult as possible to see a police officer being responsible for the death of a black man who was on drugs. I don't care what drugs George Floyd was on. The drugs didn't kill him. And they know this. Character assassination is diabolical. You're stooping extremely low. The defense, in their own way, are secretly trying George Floyd. That's what they're doing. They're trying George Floyd. Louise Roy, humbly bow to you. Good to see you. Love you big time. They begged the officer to get off of George Floyd's neck, and he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it. It is earthly sad that today is March 25th, 2021. And on this day, we are still right where we were on March 29th, 1965. Some things have changed, but not enough has changed for the betterment of Black people. Good morning, Tammy, always 100, never, ever fake. Not enough has changed. And it's sad to when either way the verdict goes, I promise you, there's going to be violence in the streets. Okay, they just recessed. There's going to be violence in the street. Remember, the George Floyd protest wasn't just in the United States. It became a global thing, to where people got to looking at the United States and saying, this has been going on too long. This is one you cannot ignore. And it didn't have anything to do with color. People stepped out and they marched all over the world. They laid in the middle of the streets as we watched George Floyd beg not to die, as he called out to his deceased mother. He begged for water. I just want water. That's what they would like for us to think. Tammy always 100, never fake, but this is not the George Floyd trial. It's not. But the defense, in their own minds, see it as a George Floyd trial. George Floyd is dead. Even in his death, he's assassinated. Even in his death, he becomes a victim all over again by a crooked system. A crooked system. And our criminal justice system is not broken. It was designed exactly the way it is. We plan to keep you updated throughout the day until the trial ends. As much as we can, we'll go live. When we can't, we'll probably upload a video, or we'll send out a post to keep you all updated on this trial. The world is watching this trial. The world is watching this trial. Keep in mind that when the police were called on George Floyd, they were called in reference to a non-violent crime. Non-violent. Non-violent. So if we called in on a non-violent crime, which was the attempt passing of a counterfeit $20 bill, how do we go from a non-violent crime to a violent crime and death? All in just a matter of minutes. Keep in mind, it is alleged that George Floyd was trying to pass a counterfeit 20. Okay. Quiet as it's kept, everyone on this live feed, including me, at some time in life, we've passed counterfeit bills, unbeknownst to us. So I said that to say this: if it was a counterfeit $20 bill, how do we know George Floyd knew what it was and he was coming in trying to run game? We don't know that. And we never will. We never will. This trial is so scary because we know what we saw. We know what we saw, and we've read the law. And we know when you use the word, as the medical examiner did, homicide, and as the prosecutor just pointed out, when you see the word homicide, it doesn't mean that someone killed themselves. The word homicide simply means somebody killed that person. Somebody did. And that somebody is on trial today. Derek. That's the criminal. That's the one who stands accused of killing George Floyd. But it's not an open and shut case, because they're going to talk about George Floyd. They're going to call him, as Benjamin Crump said, every name but the name on his birth certificate. Character assassination. But it has nothing to do with this nonviolent crime. It hasn't anything to do with a white officer being told by people that was watching. You're killing him. He's foaming at the mouth. And when pressure was too hard on his ribs and he was trying to breathe, the prosecutor said you saw him kind of went back a little bit, and that was George Floyd trying to breathe because his breathing was being cut out. Can't breathe. Go get him. Mama, I just want water. And it meant nothing to that white officer. He even had a smirk on his face. Not a lot has changed. That's why we call for defunding the police. Nothing has changed. Nothing is going to change until we defund the police department, until we make police officers extremely nervous, not to mention pulling out a gun, but to even pull out a taser. Don't forget, during the protests around the world about George Floyd and others in the past, let us not forget that more Black people were killed, racially profiled, police brutality. It didn't stop. It didn't stop. It angered the police department. It angered them to the degree that in so many words they would say, I dare you all try to convict a white officer for killing a nigger. He did drugs. He was a thug. Some of our biggest thugs in the United States wear a badge on a gun. Keep your eyes on them. Watch. They're clever. They got so many tricks up their sleeve not to convict this white officer. The 3 charges he's facing: 2nd degree unintentional murder, 2nd degree manslaughter, and 3rd degree murder. When we put up the charges last night, one lady said, what the hell? Unintentional. I don't believe the officer left his home that morning with thoughts of killing George Floyd on his mind. So you know one thing about what's going to happen that day. So we can't say premeditated murder, but we know it's murder. The law said if you had time to correct something, if you had time to prevent theft, and you did not do so, then you have committed a homicide. The officer had ample amount of time to take his knee up, not to mention from George Floyd begging, but from the crowd telling him, you're killing him, he can't breathe, he's foaming at the mouth, fluids are leaking. That's not an unintentional murder. That's murder. It's just as simple as that. Police officers in this country and around the world must be held accountable for their actions. They must be. Either way it goes, hell will break loose in the streets real soon. One side's going to be happy, one side's going to be pissed. But what I'm not going to do during our lives or any of our updates, I'm not going to bring up anything about George Floyd's past. To me, it's irrelevant to why he's dead. It's irrelevant. I love you all big time as always. We appreciate you all for tuning in to our live broadcast. We'll be back sometime later today live. Hopefully, if not, again, we'll upload a video or we will upload a post on this trial. It is a trial it may turn out to be the most watched trial in U.S. history. But before I go, I'm going to say this again. There is absolutely no defense for absolute wrong. It's not. It's not. I love you all. You all enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all for watching. Talk to you later. Maybe this one.